So, I thought we could do things a little differently this time around. I thought maybe it'd be cool to watch the movie through, and then we can pause it and talk about like the story beats and how it conveys its theme, and also if it successfully like moves us and impacts us like deeply and emotionally by the time it comes to its crisis and resolution and all that kind of stuff. I've seen Soul before. Usually when I watch through a film to like analyze it, the first time through, I do what everybody does. You just watch it. You get taken by the film and the characters and all that stuff. I thought Soul was okay. It's pretty in line with like the Pete Docter canon, I think. He did Monsters, Inc., Up, and Inside Out, which are all solid films, but he does a weird thing in the second act where things get kooky. Like, Up is a good example where it's like, has a really solid beginning and a really solid conclusion, and then in the middle, there's like talking dogs and Kevin the bird. It all works, but it's unexpected. And Inside Out, there was like the boyfriend like catapult thing. The second act gets kooky for Pete. And I think this movie fits right into that. Let's start it up. Pixar Soul.
Forgot my socks, Mr. G.
Okay, she forgot her socks.
That's a pretty relatable thing in band. There's always someone who's just lying on a chair because they forgot their instrument.
That's when I knew I was born to play.
Okay, so that seems like the first like thematic claim that is relevant to the rest of the story. He says he was born to play. That is, I guess, his worldview at this point.
Welcome to the MS-70 family, Joe. Permanently.
Oof.
A full-time job.
Walking around with a hole in his pants.
So you're going to tell them yes, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Good.
This scene shows us the first like conflict for him, that his mom wants him to have a secure life, a secure job that pays the bills, and then he still just wants to play and like make it to a level of success. Well, I mean, it doesn't even necessarily say that. He wants to make gigging work. Born to play. Which is interesting just because there is a category for what born to play means, because he's playing at school, but clearly that's not good enough. There is some level of success that he's putting into his identity in that point. Like, he's born to be on the stage and play and have that work.
I would die a happy man if I could perform with Dorothea Williams.
That's thematic. He would die a happy man if he could play with Dorothy Williams. Dorothea.
Joe is regardless.
I love her character design.
Sorry, I zoned out a little back there.
It's a nice parallel to the girl who plays trombone.
Okay? Forget class. I'm in a different class. I'm in the Dorothea Williams class.
I never say who he's talking to on this. Okay, so the inciting incident. The inciting incident is usually like where the claim of the movie is put to the test. We talk about this in the Onward video. So like in The Lion King, it sets up that Simba needs to like take responsibility for the kingdom and his place in the circle of life, and then his father dies. So the inciting incident is, will he take responsibility and rise to the occasion, or will he run away? So then it explores both of the sides of that worldview. So then in this movie, because we've seen it before, we know that the two sides of the argument are get myopically focused on one thing and let that disconnect you from life, or to stay open and present and noticing all the nuance and beauty to life. The problem, I would say, with this first act is that we don't know yet how his obsession with jazz is actually affecting him outside of it's not giving him like stability, which I don't think is necessarily a problem. I don't think that you should sacrifice stability to do what you want to do. I'm just like, yeah, he's doing what he wants to do, and then he dies. So I don't really know what the movie's about at this point, which is a problem because the first act gives us the context, the lens to view everything else through. Is he still being myopic and focused intensely on one thing that's still ruining his life? Or Is he noticing and seeing outside of himself and being present? But we don't know that yet. This kind of fabric of reality. It's pretty cool. I thought he couldn't feel anything.
I seriously doubt that.
I like Terry's theme music. It's spoopy. Petty human personalities of these like light reality creatures is, you just expect them to be at a much larger, more mature psychological perspective for being, yeah, these like infinite beings.
I'm an agreeable skeptic who's cautious yet flamboyant. I'm an ear.
One thing I do like about Pete is that he sees the connection between psychology and storytelling, and yeah, obviously continually shows up more and more in his films. Inside Out being kind of, you know, the epitome of that.
It's amazing, and you did amazing things, but here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna stand here and...
My life was meaningless.
Okay, so the biggest thing in that last scene is that's the first time we hear him say that his life is meaningless, that his lack of illustrious life means that it wasn't worth living. Which is interesting because that's kind of 22's perspective, right? Like, she doesn't think that life is worth living, thus she doesn't start it. But yeah, we still don't know that he's too focused on jazz, which is the conclusion. And we're like 26 minutes into this. I guess the biggest problem in his life thus far is that he's equating the success of like a musical career with a meaningful life, which is a little myopic. I think we can all get on the same page there.
Don't worry,
What are those souls doing?
can't crush the soul here.
No smell, no taste.
Or touch. See?
So I think this is a little silly. The fact that they can't taste, smell, or touch in the hall of everything. Like, why would all these like foodstuffs be there? How would that spark you if you can't taste it? Yet you can hear music and you can like see things. It doesn't serve a significant enough story point for them to really include it. It seems like just a gag that wasn't fully fleshed out.
Hands are hard.
How about a librarian? They're cool.
But when that joy becomes an obsession, one becomes disconnected from life.
So that right there is the first half of the argument of the entire movie. It's kind of saying that Joe's joy of jazz, say that 3 times fast, Joe's joy of jazz has become so much of an obsession that it's disconnecting him from living, which, again, is my complaint because they haven't shown that. They show that later. So this doesn't mean anything to us right now. Anyways. But yeah, I would say that's probably the best articulation of the theme throughout the whole movie. At least the negative side of the theme. You see the positive side a little later. Can't stand her character design. She looks like a hard plastic doll
Look, there I am.
with a huge upper lip. Alright, so this is my best guess for what the midpoint reversal is, which the midpoint reversal is usually when you're switching sides of the argument. The first part of the second act is usually the main character trying to do their flawed worldview to the greatest extent they possibly can. You know, later in the movie when he actually plays with Dorothea Williams and then it's not enough? That's a pretty good example of what a midpoint reversal could be. It doesn't need to be that, but I just don't really know necessarily what we've explored thus far. We haven't really seen how his life suffers from being too focused on jazz. That's kind of, we learned this now in the second part of the second act, as well as the benefits of 22 starting to like just see and notice all the little intricacies of life, which are very life-giving. So they kind of jam the whole movie all in the second part of the second act. You could say this is the inciting incident. Everything we just watched up to now is just the prologue. The cat comes back later, so what happens there? They do a pretty good job with this scene. Just, yeah, showing the utter chaos and overstimulation.
Staying right here until your stupid body dies.
that, the head. If you would like frame by frame that would probably be just like one frame, like one here and then one there.
You're in a cat. That's marvelous.
They also don't explain why both Joe and Moonwind can understand the cat, or I guess why 22 can understand Joe. It's fine. There's a lot of world mechanics that you just kind of gotta just play along.
Gotta get out of here and back in there.
I mean, it's a pretty high I love that animation. It's a pretty high concept, so I get it. They already take a lot of time to explain a lot as is, so it would be a waste of time to explain more.
You must wait for another thin spot to open between Earth and the astral plane.
Like, all this is meaningless. Just, okay.
Look, honestly, your class was the only reason I went to school at all. Like, I owe you a lot.
It's interesting that he missed that detail. Like he is the reason that Curly even stayed in school, let alone like he believed in himself because of, you know, Joe. But Joe doesn't see that as meaningful. And he doesn't really even come to see that as meaningful by the end, which is interesting.
So Connie came here to quit, but then she didn't.
22, forget about that.
This is when we finally get to see that Jazz is actually like causing problems for his life and his relationships.
It's not as
Get him. Sit the Kelroy. Look at his split.
Okay.
Look split.
like, is all this living really worth dying for?
So yeah, that's then the clearest explanation of 22's perspective.
But you were born to be a barber, weren't you?
I wanted to be a veterinarian.
Well, that's too bad. You're stuck as a barber and now you're unhappy.
I'm happy as a clam. Not everyone can be Charles Drew inventing blood transfusion.
So Dez is probably the clearest and loudest clone character. He's someone who he didn't get to do the one thing that he thought his life was about, but in doing something else, he was able to find life in it, that you're not stuck to just the one thing you were born to do, which I think is a good thing to learn.
But it is nice to finally talk to you about something other than jazz, yo.
How come we, never talked about your life before?
You never asked.
And then, yeah, this interaction is the clearest example of how his hyper-focus on Jazz has caused him to miss out on a relationship where he actually gets to know Dez. We're learning it now, 55 minutes into the film.
How did you know how to deal with Paul?
I didn't. I just let out the meat. I was jazzing.
The way they portray him and Jazz is confusing because it's a really mature understanding of art. Like, he's, every time he talks about it, he's like letting out the me. He's talking about like, this is how I wanted to talk, which is why people art, because you're like expressing aspects of life that you see and aspects of life that you think are personally important, so that you can connect with people, so other people can like see that and feel that and emotionally engage, and you're like, yeah, we're seeing the same thing, we're connecting. And so that's his view of art, which is, again, it's cogent, it's good. It's not like he's trying to prove anything about himself. Like, another version of the story is, say, like his dad had a high pressure of him to like prove himself as a musician, finds self-value and all that kind of stuff. That's not, I get that's not what the story's about, but at least there, then, like, it's really clear the reason he's doing music is misguided, whereas the way they portray it is it's not misguided. The thing that's misguided, I guess, is his assuming that that is the one thing he was made for. It's not like he's trying to like prove anything to anyone. It's not really clear why reaching a certain level of success, or what even that, I mean, I guess maybe that's the whole point, because they talk about that later, where there isn't really a clear goal. He gets to where he thinks he's going to feel different, and now he's going to achieve some sort of like made itness. Like, life is going to look differently and feel differently. Yeah, I mean, that's obviously not a reality. So, okay, I mean, it's just a little undefined. They should have set that up at the very beginning, like in the first act, to be like, ah, man, I just need to get to X, and once I get there, then, I mean, I guess they kind of do. He says, I would die a happy man if he could play with Dorothea Williams. Okay. I see you. I wish they would just have shown more clearly how, one, he thought his life was bad before the Hall of Fame. Like, he just, everything was painted in this like grayish kind of like, it's not good enough, I'm not there yet. Or they showed like how his decisions are like ruining all his relationships kind of just earlier. Because then, again, it sets up how we're going to watch the film so that by the time he changes, we have a lot of time to really stew in that change. Because we see the problem as early as possible, and then it's just like he tries and tries and tries, and then he fails and fails and fails and tries and fails, and he doesn't get it, and then at the very end, after the crisis, the lowest of low, and you're like, gosh, he may not do it, then he changes, and you're like, oh, yes. But they release the information so slowly that the change doesn't come out as emotionally significant. That's what I think is happening. Let's keep watching. Now that I have articulated the whole film and what I think the problem is. I love this character. Like, the child, like, I don't know social conventions. I'm just going to do whatever seems novel, interesting, and fun. I love that. It's like, as much as I have issues with Frozen, I love Olaf so much. He embodies something really important.
Oh no, we're gonna have to go to Mom's.
Okay.
No, you don't understand. Mom doesn't know about this
like
gig,
this
and she's
gag,
not gonna
too.
like it.
Okay.
You don't have any other choice.
Okay.
She's the only one that can fix this.
Okay.
Stop saying okay. We gotta catch the subway across town. Come on.
Okay. Got it.
English language is weird.
Mama, playing? Then how come except for church you're the happiest when I don't? I finally let...
I get kind of what they're doing here. It does feel a little weird that, like...
You struggle like that?
So, like, these acting choices... 22 wouldn't make these acting choices because she's just repeating what he's saying. She doesn't emotionally engage with the information. And obviously, it's a choice that... I don't know if the animators or Pete Docter made that choice, but whoever did it just feels weird because that's 22, right? So it's just a little disjointing. But I get it. I think they're trying to say that he's finally being honest with his mom.
I'm just afraid that if I died today, that my life would have amounted to nothing.
I don't get why she changed her opinion so quickly. It kind of works. Like, maybe she relates. I mean, she owns her own shop, right? So she doesn't have life insurance or pension or any of that. It's just her own savings. But anyways.
I'm telling you, Joe, you really should call Lisa again.
I don't really have time for a relationship right now, 22.
It's also weird that this specific thread isn't tied up. I mean, I guess maybe it's implied at the very end. Whatever he's going to do, he's going to live. That is encompassed in living.
Maybe skywatching can be my spark. Or walking. I'm really good at walking.
Those really aren't purposes, 22. That's just regular old living.
It's actually... It's interesting because, like, she's trying to find her spark for living. And then he says, like, no, that's not a spark for living. It's just regular living. So I guess this shows kind of the butting head of those two different worldviews. Anything in life can be life-giving. You just need to pay attention and notice and be present. Whereas he's saying there needs to be some level of illustriousness, some level of grandeur that defines meaning or something worth doing.
You know, her spark, her purpose, was it music, biology? Because I have piano. It's what I was born to do. That's my spark.
A spark isn't a soul's purpose. Your purpose is your meanings of life. So basic.
So, yeah, it's pretty self-explanatory, but you're not made to do one thing, is what the movie is essentially saying.
No good. I got no purpose.
The crisis gets a little weird because it seems like it's separated out into like a few parts over time.
Get ready, Joe Gardner. Your life is about to start.
So yeah, your life is about to start. He thinks he's fine. Like, he now gets to live now that he's reached a certain tier of musicianship or accolade or something. Again, not really sure why she's so immediately accepting now. I guess she just trusts him with his passion, which is cool. I'm about that.
I heard this story about a fish.
I'm trying to find this thing they call the ocean. That's what you're in right now. This is water. What I want is the ocean.
Isn't it interesting how they have to tell a story to articulate the theme of a story? I actually love that. I love when stories do that. So yeah, essentially it's saying you're already living, like you're already in it. Anytime you have this kind of big, vague, illustrious goal that you're not going to live until you reach that. You're missing what's already in front of you. You're already doing life. The correct posture is to be present and enjoy like all the beauties and amazing just craziness that is life and existence. Yeah, there's not going to be a point where you finally made it and now you get to live. You're already doing it right now. So I guess this is technically the crisis. So we should feel like at the bottom of the pit, 22 is off, lost. And then here, what he wanted to achieve, he finally achieved it and thought it would change, and it didn't. I think it would have been more powerful had they put those like back to back. Personally, for me, when I came to this point, like, I get it, I'm with him, but I don't feel like a heart-wrenching, like, in my chest, which I want that. I want that. I missed something too. I guess when we're seeing all those memories of his, like that is his resolution. That's the resolving of his arc, because now he's seeing more aspects of his life from a greater perspective and how those were actually meaningful events in his life. I think they did an okay job with that. I do wonder if it's just like the overall pacing and sequencing of everything, why that wasn't as tear-jerky as it could have been. Maybe I just have no soul and live a gray, lifeless, emotionless life.
We are awarding you, Terry, this trophy, as you requested.
Again, it doesn't make sense for them to be petty and prideful. They've been living for infinity, and they have greater perspective than any feeble human mind. So I don't get it.
Gardener?
And I'll just take that back.
A small note here. They relieved him from all responsibilities, so it's kind of their fault that they came back.
You ready?
Huh?
To come live.
This scene's a little confusing, but I think it's a rewriting of a memory.
Your spark isn't your purpose. That last box fills in when you're ready to come live. And the thing is, you're pretty great at jazzing.
This is pretty clever. The idea of jazzing and living, they keep making like parallels of. The whole idea is improv, right? So they're saying that living is part of the improv of life.
This means you won't get to...
It's okay. I already did.
Finally accepts the life that he got to have.
We worked it out with Terry.
This is another, like, the fact that he can focus his aim one way and not be completely aware of what's happening behind him.
How are you going to spend your life?
I'm not sure. I do know. I'm gonna live every minute of it.
Woo! Those are most of my thoughts. I think it could have made its theme a little more powerfully if it would have clarified in its intro the effects of his myopia, like how that was negatively affecting his life in really visceral ways. That would have been nice. I am a little dissatisfied with the ending of this film because it's soft. Because it's making some big claims about life, right? Like, it delves into some really big abstract concepts that probably not a lot of people like thinking about, but it wants to tackle them honestly, which is dope. I'm all about that, but I don't think it actually went as far as it really needs to go for the argument on purpose and like what to do in life, right? Because it says it doesn't matter what you do, which I agree with to a point, but there is a caveat, because it does matter what you do. Like, there are morals that we all kind of agree to. If I go out and kill someone, we're all agreeing it's so bad that I have to go to jail. So it does matter what you do. And then in that vein, like, you have to talk about a hierarchy of values and what is most valuable to do. Granted, that does all start from this idea of like letting go. You have to let go of your own categories for yourself. You don't get to define what's successful, I guess is a good way to put it. Them using jazz is actually it's a really fun way to describe it, because jazz is all about improv. It's all about being present and noticing and connecting and playing off of each other to make one big thing that's greater than everybody there, each of the constituent parts. And that's dope. And I think that's a pretty good metaphor for life. But even in that, they're doing something. They're connecting, they're creating something more beautiful for the world so that other people can connect. And it's a beautiful thing. But it kind of ends on this like vague, like, I'm going to live. I'm going to enjoy life. I'm going to pay attention to the nuances and the intricacies, which is all great, but it doesn't actually advocate for the next step. And this theme of letting go isn't necessarily a new theme. Like, even movies like Cars or Surf's Up, like, it has a character super focused on having to achieve some level of success. And then by the end of the film, they have to let go that idea of success in order to prioritize relationships and living in a more present moment. Surf's Up and Soul are actually similar in theme. Similar. Or even Up. I think Up is a great example of you have an old man he's disappointed in the life he did get to have because of the life he didn't get to have with his wife. So he becomes obsessed with that. So much so that he flies his house to the place that him and his wife agreed that they were going to have a good life. And what's the resolution of the film? Well, it has that crazy emotional scene where he's like, oh, maybe I should focus on all the intricacies of the life that I had and notice all the beauties. Cool. Now I have a bigger goal. I have to be a father figure to this boy. So then he throws out all of the stuff him and Ellie had, which is him letting go. And that's a powerful scene right there. So anyways, I'm making that point to say that in all of those films, there's actually a direction and a goal at the end of it. This one, I guess that's why I'm a little dissatisfied with that ending. I do also wonder, I was talking with my friends the other day about this, but if another reason why this movie doesn't have a lot of like weight to it and it's like crisis and climax and all that good stuff is because Inside Out kind of had this a little bit, because anytime you're inside their head, it's like the rules are so abstract and it's like you could tell the writers are making it up as they go, and you don't really have a firm understanding of the rules of the world. So it becomes this kind of low stakes, anything can happen. And Soul definitely has that too. Like, there's so much of this kind of spirit world and stuff, and it's all like they're making up kind of a new world. They're using certain tropes and kind of putting twists on them and stuff. But at the same time, like, oh yeah, there's a thin part of the astral plane. Oh. So yeah, because you're building a world on that, it's hard for me as the audience member to like track and understand what the rules are, so that when there actually are problems, I actually interpret them as problems and feel them as such. Whereas, yeah, if you get too abstract and there's just no ground floor, then it's really hard for an audience member to emotionally connect at the actual stakes that, you know, what's happening, why is this bad, why is this really good, so on and so forth. But yeah, it's a decent film. I do like Pete Docter. I love Inside Out. It's one of my favorite films. This one, not as strong as I thought it could be, but I liked the idea of the topics and how explicit it was, I guess. Because that's what's funny with all the other movies I had mentioned, like those were more metaphor, whereas this one was explicitly about what you should do in life. The title is Soul. So it's a bummer it wasn't like super strong. I'll say that. It's a bummer it wasn't super strong. All right. Catch y'all guys next time. Bye. Hey, so I'd love to hear what you guys thought about Soul in the comment section below. If you find what we're doing valuable, you can support our channel over on Patreon. And this video was produced by Frozen Was Actually Genius, Connor Fitzer, Matt Laskowski, Rockfax, Clownhound, C.S. Lewis, David M., Rachel Stephen, Caitlin Taylor, Miley Greenwell, Richard Roberts, Pickle Princess, Kyle M. Martin, and Amelia Allure. Thanks, guys.